The collision. Some people leave marks on your life in ink, others in fire. Naomi Rivers never expected her mark to come in the form of coffee stains and contempt. The morning rush at Ember and Brew had turned the cozy cafe into a symphony of chaos. Steam hissed from espresso machines, milk frothed in silver pitchers, and the line stretched past the pastry case where croissants gleamed under warm lights. Naomi moved through it all with practiced grace, her dark curls tied back with a bandana, her smile genuine despite the exhaustion settling into her bones. This was her third double shift this week, but rent didn't pay itself, and dreams of opening her own bakery required more than hope. She had exactly 2 rules for surviving the coffee rush. Stay calm when customers got cranky. Never take it personally when they treated you like you were invisible. She was about to break both rules. The man who walked through the door at 8:15 looked like he'd stepped out of a business magazine. Tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, dark hair styled with the kind of precision that came from expensive salons. He had the bearing of someone used to being the most important person in any room, and the phone pressed to his ear suggested he thought this conversation was more valuable than acknowledging the world around him. Naomi watched him cut past 3 people waiting in line, still talking on his phone, not even glancing at the customers he'd just dismissed. Her co-worker Devin shot her a look that said, "Here we go again." When the man reached the counter, he didn't lower his phone. He held up one finger in a universal gesture for wait, as if Naomi's time was something he could pause and resume at will. She waited. 10 seconds, 20, 30. The line behind him was growing restless. A woman with a toddler shifted her weight. An older gentleman checked his watch. The espresso machine screamed for attention. "Excuse me," Naomi said politely. "Whenever you're ready to order." The man glanced at her briefly, his gray eyes cold and dismissive, then returned to his phone call. "No. Tell them the offer stands until Friday. Not a day longer." Naomi felt something snap inside her. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that she'd been on her feet since 5 in the morning. Maybe it was years of swallowing her words and smiling through disrespect finally reaching their limit. "Sir, I need you to order or step aside for the other customers." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and his expression said he couldn't believe she'd interrupted him. He covered his phone. "I'll order when I'm ready. The people behind you have been waiting patiently. If you're not ready, you can step to the side." His jaw tightened. "I was here first. Actually, you cut in front of Mrs. Chen." Naomi gestured to the elderly woman third in line who was now watching with wide eyes. "But if you'd like to order now, I'm happy to help you." The man's face went through several shades of red. He ended his call with a curt goodbye and pocketed his phone. "Large black coffee, no room for cream." "Great choice." Naomi rang it up, her smile tight. "Name for the order? Does it matter? It helps us keep track of drinks during busy times." He sighed like she'd asked him to solve a complicated math equation. "Bennett. Owen Bennett." "Perfect. That'll be $4.75. Owen pulled out his wallet with the kind of irritation usually reserved for major inconveniences, not coffee purchases. He handed her a credit card without looking at her. "Actually," Naomi said sweetly, "we have a $5 minimum for cards." "You're joking. Sign's right there." She pointed to the small placard next to the register. "But we take cash, or you could add a pastry." "I don't want a pastry, I want coffee." "Then cash works great." They stared at each other across the counter. His expression said he wanted to argue, wanted to demand an exception, wanted to remind her that rules were for other people. Her expression said she'd held her ground against far worse than entitled businessmen having bad mornings. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, pulling out cash and slapping a $5 bill on the counter. "Your change will be 25 cents. Keep it. Consider it compensation for your sparkling personality." The sarcasm landed like a slap, but Naomi kept her smile. "I'll make sure it goes toward my therapy fund. Dealing with difficult customers really takes a toll." His eyes widened slightly. Behind him, someone snorted with laughter. "I'd like to speak to your manager," Owen said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Great idea. I'd love for her to hear about how you cut the line and then insulted me when I asked you to be considerate of other customers. Naomi's smile never wavered. Devin, can you grab Rachel from the back? Her co-worker disappeared through. The swinging door in the cafe had gone noticeably quieter. Everyone was watching now, this standoff between the waitress and the suit. You have no idea who you're talking to, Owen said. You're right. I don't. Because you never introduced yourself properly. You just expected everyone to accommodate you. Naomi leaned forward slightly. Here's a tip that won't cost you anything. Treating service workers like actual human beings makes the whole experience better for everyone. You should try it sometime. Rachel emerged from the back, her manager's apron slightly flour-dusted, her expression already tired. What's going on? Your employee just insulted me, Owen said before Naomi could speak. I came in for a simple coffee and was subjected to attitude and rudeness. Rachel looked at Naomi, who remained calm. Is this true? I asked him to wait. His turn in line and informed him of our card minimum policy. When he made a sarcastic comment about my personality, I responded honestly. Naomi met Rachel's eyes. I was professional. I just wasn't silent. Rachel had managed Ember and Brew for 12 years. She'd seen every kind of customer, every kind of conflict. She looked between Naomi, her best worker who'd never caused problems, and Owen, who had the look of someone used to getting his way. Sir, I apologize if there was any confusion, Rachel said diplomatically. Your coffee is on the house today. I don't want it on the house. I want an apology from her. Naomi felt her spine stiffen. She'd done nothing wrong. She'd enforced cafe policy and defended herself against rudeness. And now she was supposed to apologize for having boundaries? Apologize that your morning didn't start the way you hoped, Naomi said carefully. But I stand by my actions. That's not an apology. It's the best you're getting. The silence stretched thin and dangerous. Owen looked at Rachel. You're going to let her talk to customers this way? Rachel hesitated, and Naomi saw the calculation happening. One difficult customer versus her hardest working employee. Business versus principle. Money versus integrity. Naomi has been with us for 3 years, Rachel said finally. She's never had a complaint, so I'm inclined to trust her judgment in this situation. Owen's expression went ice cold. Fine. I'll take my business elsewhere, and I'll make sure my colleagues know exactly what kind of establishment this is. That's your choice, Rachel said quietly. He left without his coffee, the door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. The cafe remained silent for 3 seconds. Then Mrs. Chen started clapping. Others joined in. A scattered applause that made Naomi's eyes burn with unexpected emotion. Are you okay? Rachel asked, once the noise died down. I think I just committed career suicide, Naomi said, her hands shaking slightly as adrenaline faded. You stood up for yourself. That's not suicide. That's survival. But 3 hours later, when Naomi checked her phone during her break, she found an email that made her stomach drop. The building management company that owned her apartment complex had just been acquired. Effective immediately, all tenants would be transitioning to new ownership under Castellan Property Group. Rent adjustments and policy changes would be communicated within the week. She stared at the email, dread pooling in her gut. Acquisitions like this always meant rent increases. Always meant gentrification disguised as improvement. Always meant people like her, barely scraping by, would be pushed out to make room for people who could pay more. Naomi pulled up the Castellan Property Group website on her phone, curiosity and anxiety driving her to learn about her new landlord. The company specialized in urban renewal projects, whatever that meant. Luxury renovations, premium amenities, modern living spaces, all code for expensive. She scrolled to the leadership page, and her heart stopped. Staring back at her from the screen, looking polished and professional in a corporate headshot, was Owen Bennett, Chief Executive Officer, Castellan Property Group. The rude customer from this morning was her new landlord. The reckoning. The mandatory tenant meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at 6, which meant Naomi had to leave Ember and Brew early and sacrifice tips she desperately needed. She climbed the 4 flights to her apartment. The elevator had been broken for 8 months now, and tried to prepare herself mentally for whatever announcement was coming. Her apartment building, Riverside Terrace, had seen better days. The carpet in the hallways was worn thin, the paint peeled in corners, and there was a persistent smell of cooking oil and old wood. But it was home. She'd lived here since moving to the city 5 years ago, fresh from culinary school with dreams bigger than her bank account. The rent was almost affordable, her neighbors were kind, and she was only 20 minutes from the cafe. Now Owen Bennett owned it, and Naomi had a sinking feeling that home was about to become unaffordable. The community room on the first floor was packed when she arrived. Every chair was filled, people lined the walls, and the anxiety was thick enough to taste. Naomi spotted her neighbor, Mr. Tanaka, who'd lived in 3C for 30 years. Beside him sat the Flores family with their 3 kids. In the corner, old Mrs. Whitmore clutched her walker, her face creased with worry. These were real people with real lives, and Owen Bennett was about to deliver news that would change everything. A woman in a gray suit stood at the front of the room, her tablet glowing in her hands. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Voss, property manager for Castellan Group. Thank you for coming on short notice. Mr. Bennett will be here shortly to discuss the transition." "Is he raising the rent?" someone called out. "All details will be covered in the presentation," Patricia said smoothly, which wasn't an answer at all. The door opened and Owen Bennett walked in. He looked exactly as he had at the cafe, perfectly pressed suit, confident stride, that same air of someone used to commanding rooms. His eyes swept the crowd with professional detachment until they landed on Naomi. She watched recognition flare in his expression, followed quickly by something that might have been dismay. For a brief, satisfying moment, he looked uncomfortable. "Good," Naomi thought. "Good evening," Owen said, recovering quickly and moving to stand beside Patricia. "I'm Owen Bennett, CEO of Castellan Property Group. I understand building transitions can be unsettling, so I wanted to meet with you personally to discuss our plans for Riverside Terrace." "Plans to kick us out?" Mr. Tanaka called out, his accent thick with emotion. "I've lived here 30 years. This is my home." "No one is being kicked out," Owen said, and he sounded sincere. "Our goal is to improve the building while working with existing residents." "That's what they all say," someone muttered. Owen's jaw tightened slightly. Naomi recognized that look now. It was frustration barely contained. The expression of someone who wanted to be understood but didn't know how to bridge the gap between his intentions and other people's fears. "I understand your skepticism," he continued. "The previous ownership let this building deteriorate significantly. The elevator hasn't worked in months, the plumbing is outdated. The heating system fails every winter. These aren't minor issues, they're safety concerns. So fix them without raising the rent," Naomi said loudly, unable to stop herself. Every head turned toward her. Owen's eyes locked onto hers, and something complicated passed between them. Recognition, tension, a strange electric current that had nothing to do with their previous encounter, and everything to do with this moment. "Ms. Rivers," he said, and she was surprised he remembered her name. "I appreciate your concern, but renovations cost money. And I appreciate that you have money." Naomi stood up, her heart pounding. "What I don't appreciate is buying buildings as investments and pricing out the people who already live there. I'm not pricing anyone out." "Then what's the rent increase going to be?" The room went deadly silent. Everyone was staring at Owen, waiting for the answer that would determine their futures. Patricia stepped forward. "Rent adjustments will be implemented gradually. Starting in 3 months, there will be a 12% increase to help offset renovation costs." The room erupted. 12%. For Naomi, that meant an extra $140 a month. Money she didn't have. Money that would force her to choose between rent and groceries, between staying here and abandoning the neighborhood she'd built a life in. "That's not gradual," someone shouted. "That's impossible." "We're offering a grace period," Patricia continued, raising her voice. "No increases for the first 3 months, and for residents facing genuine financial hardship, we can discuss payment plans or temporary freezes." "Payment plans?" Mrs. Whitmore's voice shook. I'm on a fixed income. I can't pay more, not now, not later. Owen's expression shifted, something genuine breaking through the corporate polish. Mrs. Whitmore, I promise we'll work something out. No one in your situation will be forced to leave. Promises don't pay rent, Naomi said, her voice cutting through the noise. Neither do payment plans that just delay the inevitable. Owen turned to her fully now, and she saw something in his face that surprised her. Not anger, not dismissal. Something closer to pain, like her words had actually landed somewhere that mattered. What would you have me do? He asked quietly. And the question seemed directed only at her despite the room full of people. The building is falling apart. People are living with broken elevators and faulty heating. Would you prefer I let it crumble while everyone stays at the same rent? I'd prefer you didn't buy buildings you can't afford to fix without exploiting the people who live there. And I'd prefer to have a conversation instead of being accused of exploitation when I'm trying to help. They were staring at each other now, everyone else fading into background noise. The tension between them was different than it had been at the cafe. Sharper, more personal, charged with something neither of them seemed ready to name. Help? Naomi laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't know the first thing about the people you're claiming to help. You don't know that Mr. Tanaka sends money to his daughter every month for his grandson's medical bills. You don't know that the Flores family is saving for their daughter's college fund. You don't know that Mrs. Whitmore volunteers at the library 3 days a week because her pension doesn't cover her prescriptions. Then tell me, Owen said, and his voice had gone quiet again. Intense. Tell me what I don't know. Naomi felt something crack open in her chest. I work 2 jobs, 60 hours a week. I have $19 in my checking account until Friday. I eat ramen 4 nights a week so I can save money for my own bakery. Someday, a dream that gets further away every time someone like you decides that profit matters more than people. So 12% isn't just a number to me, Mr. Bennett. It's the difference between staying here and being homeless. The room had gone completely silent. Even Patricia looked uncomfortable. Owen's face had lost its corporate mask entirely. He looked stricken, like her words had physically hit him. I didn't know, he said quietly. You didn't ask. You're right. He took a breath. You're absolutely right, and I apologize. That surprised her. Powerful men didn't apologize easily, especially not in front of rooms full of people they could dismiss as beneath them. The rent increase stands, Owen continued, and Naomi felt her brief hope shatter. But here's what else stands. Every single person in this room will have the opportunity to meet with me one-on-one to discuss their specific situation. Not with my property manager. With me. If you genuinely can't afford the increase, we'll work out individual arrangements. Payment plans, temporary freezes, reduced increases. Whatever makes sense for your circumstances. Why should we trust you? Someone asked. Because I'm putting it in writing. Owen gestured to Patricia, who looked surprised. Draft an addendum to every lease. Any tenant who can demonstrate financial hardship gets protection from rent increases for 12 months. After that, we revisit based on their situation. Patricia's eyes widened. Mr. Bennett, that's not standard practice. I don't care, make it happen. He looked back at Naomi and she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Determination, sincerity, a desperate need to be believed. Ms. Rivers, you said I don't know the people I'm claiming to help. You're right. I've been treating this like a business transaction when it's people's lives. So help me understand. Come to my office tomorrow. Tell me what I need to know. Why would I do that? Because you care about this building and the people in it more than anyone else in this room. His voice was steady, certain. Because you're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong, and because I think we both know this conversation isn't finished. The understanding Naomi didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small bedroom, staring at water stains on the ceiling she'd long stopped noticing, and replayed the meeting over and over. Owen Bennett's face when she'd told him about her $19. His voice when he'd apologized. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only person in the room. It was disorienting, this shift from enemy to something undefined. At the cafe, he'd been easy to dismiss. Rude customer. Entitled businessman. Someone she could file away in the category of people not worth her emotional energy. But at the meeting, he'd been different. Present. Listening. Willing to be wrong. That was dangerous. That made him complicated, and Naomi didn't have space in her life for complicated. She showed up at the Castellan Group offices the next morning at 10, as requested in Owen's follow-up email. The building was everything Riverside Terrace wasn't. Gleaming glass and polished steel, marble floors that reflected fluorescent lights, art on the walls that probably cost more than her yearly rent. This was Owen's world, and Naomi felt immediately out of place in her thrift store blazer and scuffed boots. Ms. Rivers, a receptionist with perfect hair, smiled at her. "Mr. Bennett is expecting you. 10th floor, corner office." The elevator was fast and smooth, nothing like the broken relic at Riverside Terrace. Naomi watched the numbers climb and tried to figure out what she was going to say. She'd agreed to come, but she still didn't entirely trust Owen's motives. People didn't get rich by being generous. There had to be an angle. The 10th floor opened into a minimalist waiting area. An assistant led Naomi down a hallway, lined with architectural renderings and photos of renovated buildings. Each one looked beautiful. Each one probably displaced dozens of families who couldn't afford the upgraded rent. Owen's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He stood near the glass, phone to his ear, one hand in his pocket. He looked the same as he had before. Perfectly pressed suit, expensive haircut. But when he turned and saw her, something in his expression softened. He ended the call quickly. "Ms. Rivers, thank you for coming. Naomi is fine. Ms. Rivers makes me feel like I'm in trouble." "Are you?" A hint of smile played at his lips. "In trouble? That depends on why I'm here." Owen gestured to the sitting area near his desk. 2 leather chairs facing each other across a glass table. "I meant what I said yesterday. I want to understand the people I'm responsible for as a landlord. Starting with you. Why me? Because you're not afraid to be honest with me. That's rare in my world." He sat down and she noticed he looked tired. Lines around his eyes she hadn't seen before. Tension in his shoulders. "Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. I told you that you're exploiting people." "Exactly." He almost smiled. Refreshing. Naomi sat carefully in the chair opposite him, feeling off balance. "So what do you want to know?" "Everything. Your job, your goals, why you're living at Riverside Terrace, what would actually help you versus what sounds good in a corporate press release." She studied him. "This feels like a therapy session. Consider it market research." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm serious, Naomi. I don't want to be the villain in your story. I don't want to price you out of your home, but I also need to make this project viable. So help me figure out how to do both." There was something disarming about his directness. Naomi had expected corporate doublespeak, carefully constructed PR statements. Instead, Owen was looking at her like her answer actually mattered, like he was genuinely trying to understand a problem he didn't know how to solve. So she told him. About culinary school and the debt that came with it. About working at Ember and Brew while taking freelance catering jobs on weekends. About her dream of opening a small bakery, something neighborhood-focused where she could create the kind of food that made people feel comforted and seen. About the $19 in her checking account that represented everything she had left after rent and student loan payments, and the cost of simply existing. Owen listened without interrupting. He took notes occasionally, but mostly he just paid attention with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and valued. 12% would break me, she finished quietly. I'd have to move. Probably leave the city entirely because anywhere cheaper is too far from my job. So all the connections I've made, the community I've built, the location that's perfect for eventually opening my bakery, all of it disappears because you decided Riverside Terrace could be worth more money. Owen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. I didn't buy Riverside Terrace to get rich, Naomi. I'm already rich. He said it without arrogance, just fact. I bought it because my grandfather lived in a building like that once. He raised my father there after my grandmother died, worked 3 jobs to keep them housed and fed, and their landlord sold the building to a developer who tripled the rent. They lost everything. Naomi blinked. I didn't know that. How could you? I don't exactly lead with my origin story. Owen's expression was complicated, layers of emotion shifting behind his careful control. My grandfather spent the rest of his life angry about it. Died bitter and broke because he never recovered from that displacement. When I started this company, I promised myself I'd never be that kind of landlord. I'd buy struggling buildings and fix them properly. Keep communities intact. Prove it was possible to improve properties without destroying lives. Then why the rent increase? Because I'm learning that good intentions don't pay for new boilers or elevator repairs. He rubbed his face, looking older suddenly. The previous owner of Riverside Terrace let everything deteriorate because he didn't want to spend money. Now the building needs $2 million in urgent repairs. If I don't do them, it's a safety hazard. If I do them without raising rent, I'll run out of funding halfway through and have to sell to someone who won't care about you or Mr. Tanaka or anyone else. Naomi absorbed this, trying to reconcile the villain she'd created in her mind with this man who seemed genuinely trapped between impossible choices. So what's the solution? I don't know yet, but I'm hoping you'll help me find one. Why me? Because you see both sides. Owen met her eyes. You understand what tenants need. You also, whether you want to admit it or not, understand business. You're working toward opening your own bakery. That means you know about overhead and profit margins and making difficult financial choices. I've never even written a business plan, but you've thought about it. You know what it costs to rent commercial space. You've calculated how many pastries you'd need to sell daily to break even. You understand the reality of trying to build something sustainable. He paused. So tell me, if you were me, what would you do? It was a genuine question, not rhetorical or manipulative. Owen was actually asking her to help him solve a problem that impacted her own life. The trust implicit in that question made something shift in Naomi's chest. She thought carefully. Phased renovations. Don't do everything at once. Fix the elevator and heating first. The safety issues. Hold off on cosmetic upgrades. That reduces immediate costs. Okay, what else? Transparent budgeting. Show tenants exactly what renovations cost and where rent increases go. People are more willing to pay more if they understand it's not lining your pockets. Owen was writing now, nodding. Keep going. Tenant Advisory Board. Monthly meetings where people can voice concerns and help prioritize repairs. Give us ownership over the process. That's brilliant. He looked up and there was something warm in his expression. See, this is what I needed. Not corporate consultants telling me best practices. Real input from someone who actually lives there. Naomi felt herself softening despite every instinct warning her to stay guarded. This doesn't fix the rent problem. Phased renovations are cheaper, but they still cost money. What if I personally subsidize the shortfall for the first year? Owen said slowly, working through the idea as he spoke. Castellan absorbs the difference between what tenants can pay and what renovations cost. No rent increases for 12 months. After that, we reassess based on what's actually been done and what people can handle. You'd lose money. I'd invest in proving a different model works. His eyes were bright now, energized. If I can renovate Riverside Terrace without displacement, I can show other developers it's possible. That's worth more than short-term profit. They sat there looking at each other across the glass table, and Naomi felt the last of her defenses cracking. This wasn't the rude customer from the cafe or the corporate villain from the tenant meeting. This was someone genuinely trying to do something difficult and right. Why were you so terrible that morning? She asked suddenly. At Ember and Brew, you were awful. Owen winced. I was on the phone with my father. He'd just told me I was wasting money trying to be ethical in real estate. Called me naive and soft. Said I'd never be successful if I kept caring about tenants over profit. He laughed without humor. I took his criticism out on you, which was inexcusable. I'm sorry. Your father sounds lovely. He's complicated. We're complicated. Most important relationships are. Something passed between them then. An acknowledgement of complexity and human imperfection. They were both messy people trying to navigate impossible situations. Neither villain nor hero, just flawed and trying. So, Owen said quietly, are we doing this? Trying to save Riverside Terrace together? Naomi knew she should say no. This was her landlord. Getting personally involved was asking for complications. But she thought about Mr. Tanaka and Mrs. Whitmore and the Flores family. She thought about the community that building represented, all the interconnected lives that would scatter if this went wrong. And she thought about Owen looking at her like she mattered. Like her input wasn't just tolerated but genuinely valued. Yeah, she said. We're doing this. His smile was devastating, genuine, and unguarded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm going to make your life difficult. I'm counting on it.